We continue to build upon our foundational knowledge of Tibet by looking more closely at the localization of Buddhism. In other words, this series of lecture bursts will explain when and why Tibetans adapted Indian Buddhism into something distinctly Tibetan. This discussion is important because it will begin to uncover why Tibetan culture is often closely tied to Buddhism. First, let's briefly summarize the major points of last week. In many respects, the Yarlung River near present-day Lhasa became the cradle of Tibetan culture, as it is here where Songtsen Gampo establishes the empire's capital. Buddhism won the favor and financial support of the early Tibetan kings, the so-called Dharma kings, Songtsen Gampo, Trisong Detsen, and Rinpoche. According to legend, Long Dharma. Now notice the difference in spelling the two forms of Dharma. One with an H, meaning religious teaching, and then Dharma of King Long Dharma without the H. In any case, Long Dharma violently suppressed Buddhism. Remember, he was the king with the black tongue. Later, Long Dharma was assassinated. But before Buddhism was suppressed, the gradual path of Mahayana Buddhism from India became the state religion in Tibet. Generally, Mahayana Buddhism, which means great vehicle, requires the practitioner to put the enlightenment of others in front of himself or herself. Hinayana, sometimes called Theravada or the individual vehicle, on the other hand, provides a path to individual enlightenment. Therefore, the main differences between Hinayana Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana boil down to the scriptures and intentions for enlightenment. Theravada Buddhism uses sutras written in Pali, and, as I explained in the last slide, provides a path to individual enlightenment. An individual who reaches nirvana on this path is called an arhat, and he or she is not reborn. Mahayana Buddhism draws sacred texts from Sanskrit and other various translations. The goal of liberation is to help all others attain nirvana. The individual who becomes enlightened but decides to return to earth to help others attain this state are called bodhisattvas. The flowchart on the right shows another way to visualize the differences in major schools of Buddhism. However, there is one minor correction. It is more accurate to place Vajrayana Buddhism under Mahayana Buddhism instead of its own school. Regardless of its school, Buddhism values the so-called three jewels: the Buddha, or enlightened being, the Dharma, his teachings, and the Sangha, or community of monks and nuns who are devoted to the Dharma and can trace their lineage to the Buddha himself. However, we are far removed from the Buddha, therefore the three jewels of Buddhism can only be understood as real and representative. By real, I do not mean inherently existing, which Buddhism rejects. In other words, real means those historically existing examples of each category. Therefore, the real Buddha is the Buddha in his enlightened stage. The real Dharma are the actual teachings he delivered in the form of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. And the Sangha is the community of enlightened individuals. This knowledge is fine and good, but it's impossible to access. Therefore, we need to rely on the representative forms of the three jewels. The Buddha is represented in statues, paintings, and other iconography that communicate the qualities of the enlightened being. Representations of the Dharma are sutra and other written texts that record the Buddhist teachings. Finally, representations of the Sangha are those individuals currently ordained as monks and nuns. The three jewels of Buddhism are especially important in Tantric or Vajrayana Buddhism, the knowledge and practice that becomes ingrained in Tibetan culture. Tantric Buddhism professes the ability to use visualizations and meditations to bring about profound cognitive changes which can result in rapid attainment of Buddhahood. Whereas other methods take lifetimes to reach enlightenment, the Tantric or Vajrayana path claims that this state can be achieved in just one lifetime. Similar to many other historical religious movements, the origins of Tantric Buddhism are disputed. Although Buddhist claims that Tantras were taught by Buddha himself, early Buddhist pilgrims did not note Tantric practices in their surveys of religious practices. However, it is certain that this practice began in India, the inspirational source of much of Buddhism in Tibet, and Tantric rituals share symbols historically used by Indian royalty. Regardless of origins, because Tantric Buddhism promises a quick path to enlightenment, its methods are considered by some to be extreme and even dangerous. The nature of this danger lies on the fact that Tantric practices do not try to control or eliminate otherwise dangerous desires. Rather, the practices teach one to harness these desires and redirect them towards enlightenment. Put slightly differently, Tantric Buddhism is a holistic approach to enlightenment that uses the entire human experience, not just the so-called good parts. In fact, Tantric Buddhism recognizes desire and pleasure, two sources of suffering according to the Four Noble Truths, as powerful stimuli that can actually propel one into Buddhahood if channeled correctly. Not just anyone can embark on the Tantric path, though. Rather, the practitioner must first clear a series of prerequisites set by basic Mahayana teachings. Therefore, first one must embody renunciation, the six perfections, and wisdom. Then, as all Mahayana Buddhists do, one must have at least partially realized bodhicitta, or the altruistic aspirations to help others reach enlightenment, with the final goal, of course, being a bodhisattva. If and only if a solid foundation in the Mahayana path is established, can one attempt the Vajrayana path, which requires tapping into the most subtle levels of consciousness. According to Buddhist physiology, the mind of clear light, or the state of our mind that's untainted by misconception, is experienced in four naturally occurring bodily processes. Can you guess what those four are? One is sleeping, but it's actually that exact moment you leave consciousness and enter sleep. The second is sneezing. The third is fainting, but more specifically, the instant one becomes unconscious. Finally, it's sexual climax, and this is believed to be the most important because it's the best opportunity to experience the mind of clear light. But why? Because of these four bodily experiences, sexual climax is the most controllable. But remember, Buddhism flourished in monasteries that housed monks who were celibate. Therefore, they took vows abstaining from sex. In fact, sex is forbidden in the monastic code, a set of rules known as Zivinya. Therefore, celibate tantric practices rely on visualizations to simulate these experiences. Since these practices aren't for everyone, they are closely guarded and mainly transmitted orally from teacher to pupil. Therefore, those aspiring to the tantric path need to find a qualified master or guru. In Tibetan, they say lama. Lama means superior. If we break down to Tibetan, the literal translation means nothing above the spirit. Today, it is rare for these superiors to be outside the monastery. But in the past, tantric masters were not always celibate, but were yogis. Similar to the three jewels of Buddhism, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the Lama has 3 levels of interpretation. The outer or external Lama is the teacher himself, the teachings, and the sacred symbols used in ritual. The inner Lama is the individual's understanding of the teachings. Finally, the secret Lama is the understanding of the pristine nature of our mind. Therefore, finding a qualified teacher is paramount for the Tantric practitioner. In fact, there are many instruction manuals detailing how one completes this important task. I've assigned The Words of My Perfect Teacher, a translation of Patrul Rinpoche's famous 19th century text on the preliminary practices of Tantric Buddhism. You will often hear the title Rinpoche from here on out, which literally means precious one, and is given to high lamas. In any event, one must look carefully for a competent teacher. Signs of a worthy lama include being strong in morals, being patient, exuding compassion, and of course possessing great wisdom, one who is preoccupied with the Dharma. And Patrul Rinpoche says, a teacher with all these qualities is like a great ship in which to cross the vast ocean of samsara. And it's even believed that the lamas are equal to all Buddhas. I want to take a slight detour to draw your attention to Patrul Rinpoche's warning against the so-called mad guides or mad yogis, which he deplores. Some have little learning and neglect their samayas and vows. Their minds are low, their conduct higher than the sky. They have broken their lifeline of love and compassion. Mad guides like these can only spread more evil. Keep this opinion in mind, and remember he is writing this text in the late 1800s, and we'll come back to why this is important in a couple of weeks. But back to the spiritual friend, or guru, and in Tibetan, of course, this title is lama. Once a genuine lama is found, the people will ask to become his disciple. If accepted, the individual enters a close relationship with his tantric master and must show him the utmost respect. According to Patrul Rinpoche, must be skilled in never displeasing the teacher and never resent his rebukes, like the perfect horse. Never be tired of coming and going like a boat. Bear whatever comes, good or bad, like a bridge. Endure heat and cold like an anvil. Obey his every order like a servant. Cast off all pride like a sweeper. And be free of arrogance, like a bull with broken horns. This, the Pitaka say, is how to follow a teacher. Since the Lama is the holder of the keys to enlightenment, as well as the attributes of Bodhisattva, quick check, what's a Bodhisattva? The pupil is not only expected to listen to the teacher, but emulate his teacher's every quality as closely as possible. Patrul Rinpoche teaches, as the disciple is learning to be like his teacher, he will need to assimilate truly the latter's realization and way of behaving. The disciple should be like a tsatsa, and here I have a picture of the tsatsa on the right, from the mold of the teacher. Just as the tsatsa faithfully reproduces all the patterns engraved on the mold, in the same way the disciple should make sure he or she acquires qualities identical with, or at very least close to those of the teacher. This tight bond is necessary because only the spiritual friend can officiate initiation or empowerment ceremonies which anoint the people in tantric practices. Our next burst will take us through one type of empowerment ceremony.